wasn't elected until I was actually in my late 50s. So it's sort of a long path. But after I got out of law school, I got really involved in professional organizations and ran for their board. First, Travis County Women Lawyers, Austin Young Lawyers Association, where I became president, the Austin Bar Association, where I became president of that board, and then I was elected to the State Bar of Texas, their board of directors. And my dad was a veterinarian and was always really involved in all of his professional organizations. So it seemed really natural to me to do that. And then I got involved in improving legal services to the poor. I got involved in our local bar-sponsored legal services organization, now called Volunteer Legal Services of Central Texas. I was on a state bar committee that worked on improving access to justice, and then the Supreme Court created an Access to Justice Foundation, and I was one of the initial commissioners appointed to that foundation board. And so I got really involved in that. I also worked on developing my professional skills, becoming a better trial lawyer. After about 10 years of practice, I was hired to be an adjunct at the University of Texas Law School to teach trial advocacy, where I got to also mentor law students and then ultimately young lawyers. And a lot of those law students are now, terrific trial lawyers who are here in Austin. So it's a lot of fun to see them. And one of them was recently elected judge, so she's going to be one of my colleagues. In the meantime, I also did all the same things that many of you've done. I got married, I had 2 kids, but I chose well and had a very, very supportive spouse who always did at least half of the child raising responsibilities, which I think makes all the difference. Because of an interest in social justice, I also got involved in democratic politics. So I joined some of the local Democratic groups, Capital Area Democratic Women, North by Northwest Democrats. I volunteered on a lot of campaigns for people I believed in who were running for judge and other offices. I raised money for them. I went out and canvassed and did block walking, which is actually something I did as a first-year college student in New Haven during the 1976 presidential election for the first time. I also got really involved in some community organizations, including the board of the Jewish Community Association of Austin. I became president-elect of my religious congregation, and then got involved in an interfaith group called Interfaith Action of Central Texas, and became president of that organization as well. And along the way, I became interested in using my professional skills and interest in justice as a judge. And so in 2004, I ran to be a civil district judge to practice in the same courts that I had been a lawyer in. I won the bar poll, so I had the overwhelming support of the lawyers in Travis County, but I came in second out of 3 in a Democratic primary. And it was a great experience for lots of reasons. I met wonderful people. I got lots of great support, but it was also a very difficult, sort of nasty campaign. So I swore I would never run it again for anything. But I stayed involved. In 2008, I became a precinct co-captain for Barack Obama's campaign. I went to Cincinnati to help do election protection work. I thought about running for precinct chair. There was a guy who'd been the precinct chair of my precinct for a long time, but he didn't want to step aside. And then in 2010, I decided I would go ahead and run against him. So I did, and I won and got more involved in the local Democratic Party. And then in 2013, the guy who had been the chair of the party was stepping aside to run for county judge, and I encouraged him not to because he was doing a really good job, and he said, no, I'm going to, but you should run for party chair. And oh, no, not me, I'm not going to. but I'll help you find somebody who will. And then all the people I talked to said, no, I don't want to do it, but you should do it. And so ultimately I did. It was a really fun volunteer job. It took a lot of time, but I raised over $1 million for the party, and I met a whole lot of people. So I was in the right place at the right time. And when one of the judges retired unexpectedly, I was recruited to run for the 345th District Court. And everybody promised me nobody would run against me this time. Of course, that turned out not to be true, but I was able to win. And so kind of the moral of all of that is the things I did right were getting involved in professional organizations, becoming a leader, honing my skills, getting involved in leadership in my community and political party, being somebody people could depend on, who actually rolled up her sleeves and did the work, and not somebody who just was there to pad a resume. And I think if you're interested in running for politics, those are all really good things to do. And till you find yourself in the right place at the right time to make that run. There aren't very many women in elected offices, although we're 51% of the population. I'll tell you that as of this coming January, where I was just reelected for my second term, fortunately without an opponent this time. But as of January, there will be 11 elected civil district judges in Travis County, all of us women. And 2 of us, Yaleys, Maya Guerra Gamble and me. A 12th civil district court was created by the legislature, and it will be filled with an appointee of the governor sometime soon who will serve until the next election. So we could have 1 man in our ranks, but all of the elected judges right now are women. State district courts are the highest level of trial courts in the state court system. There are lower level trial courts like municipal court, where you would go if you wanted to fight a traffic ticket. JP courts, or what's sometimes called small claims courts, and county courts at law. Each of those are courts that handle primarily smaller dollar amounts, although in our county, the county court at law judges are pretty interchangeable with the civil district judges, and we do share dockets. So as a civil district judge, I hear civil and family law cases, including business, commercial, administrative, consumer, real estate, divorce, child custody, and child protective services cases. Pretty much everything except for criminal cases. We also serve as the county's juvenile board. So we oversee the Gardner-Betts juvenile justice system for the county, and we are the audit committee for the county. So we hire and supervise the county auditor and oversee the outside audit of all of the county's finances. That way there are checks and balances. So the same people who spend the money aren't the ones overseeing the audit. We also write and revise local rules of practice and standing orders that tell the lawyers and self-represented parties the behavior and procedures for appearing in our courts. And I'm just hopefully finishing up what has been about 18 months of work in once-a-week meetings, working on revising all of our local rules and standing orders. Most days I preside over hearings and trials pretty much from 9 to 5 with 5 to 15-minute breaks in the mid-morning and mid-afternoon, and a lunch break that, depending on how busy and how much work we have to do, can range from as little as 30 minutes to as long as a couple of hours. We have a central docket in Travis County, which means, well, there are some exceptions of cases that are directly assigned to us, but it means that we have a court administrator who doles out the cases to equalize our workload, and we get a huge variety of cases, which is really great. Unlike some counties that have separate family courts, we each have a 3-month family law rotation every 9 months or so. So right now I'm in the middle of a 3-month family law rotation, and those cases can be really, really emotionally difficult. Family violence, child custody disputes, sometimes just property disputes, but those are cases that really touch people's lives in a very real way. And today I just finished a 3-day trial involving a 13-year-old child whose mother died in a fight between her father and her stepfather and grandmother for custody. So those are tough cases. Before the pandemic, we usually didn't know what case we were going to hear or what kind of case or what the motion was until the morning that we got assigned. And so we learned about the cases on the fly. I spent a lot of time at the courthouse over the 34 years that I practiced law before I became a judge. So I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into. But I had no idea that I was going to be on the audit committee for the county or the juvenile board. And I also didn't know a whole lot about family law because that was the one area of practice I really hadn't done. And so I spent a lot of time learning about family law, and those cases are even more emotionally difficult than I was expecting. But I would say the biggest surprise, honestly, between just the few of us here, there are a lot of really bad lawyers out there. I asked, my husband and I practiced together for about 6 years before I won this position. And I said, how come we didn't have any of them on the other side of our cases? Always seemed like they were better lawyers, but no, that has been I would say the biggest surprise is they're not prepared and they don't know what they're doing. And I can't imagine doing a job that I was so poorly prepared for and didn't really do the homework to figure out what I needed to do. I am trying really hard to be open-minded and not to make a decision until I've heard everything. And so I try not to make people think, oh, she's already decided, or, oh, she, hates this. Now, there are times when I'll say to a lawyer, well, are you arguing this? And so they kind of know, because I want them to realize they're going in the wrong direction. But for the most part, I try to keep it pretty straight down the middle. One of my frustrations that's particularly true in family law, where so much depends on who you believe, because there's such diametrically opposed sides. And sometimes, and I remember pretty early on one time, there was this couple that came in, and the husband had a cast on his leg and told this story about how his wife pushed him through a window and he had a huge, cut, and he wanted a temporary restraining order to keep her away from him, and she was so dangerous. And her story was, no, he stomped on this picture just to get back at me, and that's how he cut his leg. And it didn't happen that way at all. And I ended up granting the temporary restraining order, and I remember she got really upset with me and said, well, how can you say that? How can you even, you haven't heard from everybody? And it was an emergency proceeding, so they're supposed to be 15 minutes, so I don't get to hear from anybody, but I try to protect people if I think there's any danger. And I looked at her and I said, as a judge, if I could have any superpower, the one I'd really like to have is the ability to tell who's telling me the truth and who isn't. But I don't have that power. So I just have to do the best that I can. And that's the hardest. That's, did I get it right? Did I figure out correctly who was the one committing family violence? Did I get it right about what did this one parent sexually abuse this child, or is the other parent making it up? Those kinds of things are so hard. And, we have the benefit of having the ability to appoint guardians ad litem who go and interview people. And there are people who serve as appointed special advocates, CASAs, who go and meet with the families and the kids, and they get to know all the people involved a lot more than I can just watching the hearings and the trial. And those people are so valuable. If you have any interest at all, I'd really encourage you to go look at that organization, CASA, and consider becoming a CASA, because we couldn't do our jobs without them. It hasn't been mandated by the state that we do unconscious bias training, although I personally think that it should be. But I know that in Travis County, we have all been working on finding those kinds of trainings to do, and have been participating in them. So it's obviously something that's at the top of a lot of people's minds right now. We're talking about also trying to figure out what instructions and information we can give to jurors to help them think about their unconscious biases. And so it's an issue for both judges and for juries, people who serve on juries, and it is something that I think that in Travis County, it's sort of a no-brainer, because most of us are pretty in tune to the need for it. I would say that I have found some of my fellow judges in some of the more rural parts of the state are not so open-minded about things like this, and it probably would be good if the state mandated it.